Welcome back for another deep dive with us today. Um, Today we're going to try to get to the bottom of something. I think we've all wondered about why we're so addicted to buying stuff. I mean, really, what is the deal with this like insatiable desire to just get more stuff, more stuff, more stuff, even when our closets are already bursting and our bank accounts are like, please stop.
Yeah, it's a really interesting question. And it's a question that goes way beyond just like personal preference or, just individual quirks. What we're going to do today is we're going to kind of like dive into the heart of consumerism. We're going to explore the psychology of why we buy things, the forces that kind of like shape that desire to always be buying more and more. And then also kind of like what does this mean for us and for the planet?
Exactly. And to help us like unpack all of this, we've got a really interesting mix of sources for this deep dive. A couple of YouTube videos that I think are really insightful, and then an academic paper that adds just like a whole other layer.
Okay.
So yeah, get ready to go deep.
Definitely. And what's really interesting is that we're going to explore all of this through the lens of a trend that not too long ago seemed like it was going to totally revolutionize how we relate to stuff. And that is minimalism.
Oh yeah, minimalism. Remember like back in the 2010s when everybody was like Marie Kondoing their entire lives?
Yeah.
It was all about less is more and really felt like a big cultural shift, like a pushback against all the excesses of consumerism.
Yeah. And, minimalism really did tap into this widespread feeling that people had. People were overwhelmed with just stuff, physical clutter, mental clutter. And they really wanted a sense of freedom from that constant pressure to buy, buy, buy.
Totally. And, even people like Levi Hildebrand, he's the host of the Future Proof YouTube channel. He was making videos about minimalist wardrobes,
Yeah.
minimalist travel, minimalist Christmas gift guides. I mean, it really felt like minimalism was here to stay.
For sure. And, we all know what happened. It kind of like faded away. In fact, you could even argue that there's been like a resurgence of maximalism lately, especially after the pandemic. Hildebrand himself actually acknowledges this in one of his videos. He talks about how during lockdown, when everyone was stuck at home, there was this huge surge in online shopping.
Oh, yeah, for sure. I mean, when you're stuck at home and you've got nothing but time and Wi-Fi, your online shopping habits can definitely get a little out of control. But this whole shift away from minimalism, it kind of raises some questions. Did minimalism fail? Or was it just like a temporary blip?
I think that's a really important question that we need to unpack. You see, minimalism was all about like being conscious about what you buy, but it didn't really address this underlying issue, this idea that our whole economic system is built on buying stuff. Hildebrand actually says this in one of his videos. He says, our whole world, like it or not, is built on buying stuff.
Okay, yeah, that is a very sobering thought. It's starting to feel like this isn't just about like what we choose to do as individuals. It's more like we're part of this system that's designed to keep us consuming, whether we realize it or not.
That's exactly the point that the YouTube channel Our Changing Climate makes in one of their videos. They say that consumerism itself isn't the problem, it's a trap. A trap that we're all stuck in because the system needs us to consume more and more just to keep functioning.
Yeah, and they have some pretty shocking statistics to back that up. Did you know that total retail sales in the U.S. have more than doubled since 2013? Like, it's not like our population doubled in that time.
Yeah.
And get this, the average home size has increased by 149% since 1980. But family sizes have actually gotten smaller. I mean, what is going on?
All of that points to this thing called overproduction. Capitalism basically needs to keep growing, which means companies have to churn out more and more stuff, even if we don't actually need it. And to get rid of all that extra stuff, they have to convince us that we do need it. They create this illusion of choice and freedom. But the reality is that what we see in the stores, what we're presented with, it's mostly driven by profit and competition, not actual consumer demand.
They use Best Buy as an example in the video. They argue that when you walk into a store like Best Buy, you might feel overwhelmed by all the choices. But it's actually all carefully curated to make them the most money. It's not really about meeting your needs.
Right. It's like this myth of consumer sovereignty, like we're the ones in control of our choices. But the more you dig into it, the more it feels like we're just pawns in this game.
So then the question is, how are we being manipulated? What are these psychological tactics that are making us play this game?
Okay, so that's where it gets really interesting. Our changing climate talks about this concept of false needs. The idea that corporations basically invent problems that their products just happen to solve. It's all about making you feel like you need something, creating an emotional attachment to a product that has nothing to do with what it actually does.
Oh yeah, I remember that example they use.
They quote another YouTuber who talks about how a simple chocolate bar can be transformed into this like world-saving, eco-friendly, guilt-free indulgence just through marketing. I mean, come on, it's just chocolate. but they manage to attach all these other meanings and emotions to it. So you feel good about buying it. It's brilliant, but it also shows you how our minds work.
Totally. We're not just buying products, we're buying identities, we're buying aspirations. And what's even crazier is that this is not a new thing. We're conditioned from childhood to think that happiness comes from stuff.
It's true. Toys equal happy childhood. Your first job means you can finally get a car. Adulthood means a bigger house. It
Yeah.
never ends.
It's like we're programmed to think that the next thing, the next upgrade, is going to be the thing that finally makes us happy. But does it?
That is the big question. And to answer it, we have to go even deeper. We have to explore the role of ego and status and this basic human desire to try to fill emotional voids with stuff.
All right, I'm hooked. Let's do it. Let's see what other insights we can dig up about this crazy relationship we have with buying stuff.
It's interesting how this whole desire for stuff, it can be tied to our sense of self-worth, like our status. In one of his videos, Austin Williams talks about how spending can actually be a way of seeking validation. Like you're trying to project this image of success and importance to the world.
Oh, he uses Mike Tyson as an
Yeah.
example. Remember back when Tyson was like at the top of his game making millions? Williams talks about how Tyson ended up bankrupt
Mhm.
because he was spending all his money on these crazy lavish things like exotic tigers and a $2 billion bathtub.
Yeah, it's a classic example of what can happen. When your desire for status and validation, it gets all mixed up with material possessions. It becomes this never-ending game of trying to one-up everyone else. You have to keep accumulating more and more bigger and better things just to try to prove your worth. But as we see with Mike Tyson, that path, it doesn't really lead to happiness or fulfillment.
No, it's like you're trying to fill some kind of emotional void with stuff.
Yeah.
And it never really works. You buy the fancy car, the designer clothes, the huge house, but you still feel empty inside.
Exactly. And Williams talks about that too. He says that people often try to cope with things like stress, loneliness, even boredom through overeating or overspending.
It's like retail therapy, but on a much deeper level. It's not just about buying a little something to cheer yourself up. It's about using stuff to try to numb the pain or fill a void.
And it's often connected to memories too. Williams talks about how decluttering can be so hard for people because we attach sentimental value to objects. Those objects, they represent moments in time, relationships, experiences. We hold on to them because they hold a part of our past.
Oh, totally. I have this box of old concert tickets and festival wristbands, and I just can't get rid of them. I mean, I know they're just taking up space, but it feels like if I throw them away, I'm somehow erasing those memories.
Yeah, but it makes you wonder, does holding on to all that stuff, does it actually prevent us from fully embracing new experiences and making new memories? Or are we so busy trying to preserve the past that we're missing out on the present?
That's a really good point,
Uh,
and it makes me think about the bigger picture. All this consuming, all this accumulating, what's the point? Who's really benefiting from all of this?
that's the question we need to ask. And our changing climate, they bring up some hard truths about the cost of all this consumerism, the environmental costs, the social costs. They point out that the U.S., even though we're only 5% of the world's population, we consume almost 16% of the world's fossil fuels. And we waste something like 30 to 40% of our food, while millions of people around the world are going hungry.
It's like we're living in this bubble, totally oblivious to the fact that our lifestyle is destroying the planet and contributing to inequality. And the crazy thing is, all this consuming doesn't even make us happy. Remember that thing they talked about, the Easterlin paradox?
Oh, yeah, the Easterlin paradox. It basically says that after a certain point, having more money and buying more stuff, it doesn't actually make you any happier.
So if all this buying isn't making us happier, and it's actually hurting the planet and other people, why do we keep doing it? It's like we're addicted to something that's slowly killing us.
Okay, so this is where our final source comes in. It's an academic paper that explores the link between consumption and addiction. It's by Gerda Reith. And it really dives deep into the societal structures that shape our relationship with consumerism.
Interesting.
Reith argues that modern society's emphasis on freedom and self-governance has actually created an environment where addiction thrives.
Wait, that seems kind of counterintuitive.
Yeah.
How can freedom lead to addiction?
Well, Reith's argument is that this constant focus on individual choice and autonomy, it's led to this idea that we're solely responsible for our own happiness. And that puts a lot of pressure on us. Pressure to make the right choices, to buy the right things, to achieve a certain level of material success. And when we inevitably fall short of these impossible standards, we're left feeling inadequate and empty.
So it was like we're set up to fail. We're told we're free to choose, But those choices are often driven by this deeper sense of lack.
Exactly. And what's even worse is that this culture of individualism, it frames addiction as a personal failing, like it's a weakness of will, instead of seeing it as a symptom of a larger societal problem.
It's like we're blaming ourselves for being caught in this trap. But if we're all trapped, if the system is designed to keep us consuming, how do we break free?
That is the million-dollar question. Are we destined to be cogs in this machine? Or can we find a way that prioritizes well-being instead of endless accumulation?
It feels like we're at a crossroads. We've explored the dark side of consumerism, the psychological traps, the environmental and social costs, this feeling that all this buying, it's not really leading us anywhere good. So where do we go from here? Do we just keep going down this road? Or do we try to imagine something different?
Yeah, it really feels like we've uncovered this like hidden truth, this unspoken agreement that we're all in on. Buy more, get more, be more. But what if more isn't really what we need?
Right. And the thing is, there have always been these like counter movements, people pushing back against this tide of consumerism. We talked about minimalism, but there are other philosophies and lifestyles too that challenge this whole idea that happiness comes from material wealth.
Yeah, it's like we're told that happiness comes from the outside. If we just get the right car, the right house, the right clothes, then we'll finally be happy. But what if it's actually the other way around? What if true happiness comes from within? That's a huge question. And it would require a really fundamental shift in perspective. What if, instead of always trying to get more, we focus on being content with what we already have? What if we prioritized experiences, relationships, personal growth contributing to our community, instead of just accumulating more stuff?
Yeah, but that's easier said than done, right? We're talking about going against this incredibly powerful cultural narrative, this whole system that's designed to keep us wanting more. I mean, even those of us who know better, we still get sucked in. I still find myself scrolling through online shopping sites, and I get that little dopamine hit when I add something to my cart, even though I know I don't need it.
Oh, absolutely. That's how powerful this system is. It's designed to exploit our psychology, to tap into our desires and insecurities. But like we said before, awareness is the first step. Once you see the game, once you see how it works, you can start making more conscious choices.
Okay, so what does that look like practically speaking? Are we talking about like full-on minimalism here, getting rid of everything and living like a monk? Because honestly, as appealing as that sounds, it doesn't seem very realistic for most people.
I don't think it has to be about extremes. It's not all or nothing. It's about finding a balance that works for you, being mindful about your consumption habits, asking yourself why you're buying something, and focusing on things that truly add value to your life.
So it's about being more intentional, asking yourself, do I really need this?
Yeah.
Will this actually bring me lasting joy? Or am I just trying to keep up with the Joneses?
Exactly. And it's also about exploring different ways to find fulfillment. Maybe that means spending more time in nature, connecting with loved ones, pursuing a creative hobby. There are so many possibilities.
This deep dive has really made me think about consumerism in a whole new way. It's not just about our individual choices. It's about a system that's designed to keep us wanting more, even if that more isn't actually making us happier
Yeah.
or creating a better world.
And that's the big question we're left with. Do we keep playing by the rules of a game that's rigged against us? Or do we try to create a new way of being? A way of life that values well-being over endless accumulation, connection over competition, and meaning over material possessions?
That's a really powerful question, and I don't know that I have the answers. But this deep dive has definitely given me a lot to think about. A new perspective, a new awareness, and honestly, a renewed sense of hope that maybe we can create a better future, a more conscious and fulfilling future. Thanks for joining us on this journey. Until next time, keep questioning, keep exploring, and keep seeking out those things that truly matter.